Has arrived in Singapore ahead of President Trump.
I feel that Kim Jong-un wants to do something great for his people. He won't have that opportunity again. It's a one-time shot.
When it comes to Donald Trump, there are many in the mainstream media, cable news networks, who are rooting for him to fail.
North Korea, on the other hand, understands that you want to manipulate Donald Trump, you give Donald Trump something for his ego.
Trump says it's attitude, not so much preparation that matters.
Canadians did not take it lightly. That the United States has moved forward with significant tariffs. We're polite, we're reasonable, but we also will not be pushed around.
Tariffs are going to come way down because people cannot continue to do that. We're like the piggy bank that everybody's robbing, and that ends.
150th running of the Belmont Stakes. It ends fittingly with a triple crown.
He's just perfect, and now he's just immortal! Justify as the 13th Triple Crown winner!
Good Sunday morning. We do begin with a Fox News alert. World history in the making as we get closer to the historic one-on-one meeting with President Trump and Kim Jong-un.
That's right. The North Korean leader arriving overnight and welcomed by Singapore's foreign minister. Kim Jong-un has reportedly only left his country 3 times since taking power in 2011.
In just a few hours, President Trump will land in Singapore. No sitting president has ever met or spoken on the phone with a North Korean leader. Good morning.
Wow. What a day the next 3 days will be. President landing there in Singapore in a matter of hours. As he said, he will know within a minute what the intentions are from the North Korean dictator.
You know what makes for good TV? Unpredictability and consequence. Things that matter. Talk about June 12th. Things that matter and totally unpredictable. Where will it go? We don't know, but we're going to bring it to you in real time.
Yeah, and we've got a big show for you. A big 4 hours to go this morning.
We do, and as you wake up this morning, you are going to be treated to history, and that is why we go straight to John Roberts, who is live for us in Singapore ahead of the president's arrival. John, good morning.
Griff, Abby, Pete, good morning to you. I don't quite know how this happened because it's usually Griff who's staying up all night to be with you at 6 o'clock. But here we are in Singapore where it's actually 6 o'clock in the evening. President Trump is scheduled to arrive about 2 hours and 35 minutes from now. History already being made. Kim Jong-un, as you mentioned, arriving earlier this afternoon. As far as we know, it is the furthest that he has ever traveled from North Korea since he became leader. He did go to school in Switzerland, so as a younger man, he traveled further. But as leader, we don't think he's been this far. It's about a 5.5 hour, almost 6 hour flight from North Korea to get down here. President Trump, before he left Quebec, said that he's looking forward to this meeting, saying it's a chance for the two to finally meet face to face. He said, hopefully, after their meeting, they'll like each other as well. And the president also saying that he should know very quickly, within a minute, whether or not this is going to work. Listen here.
How long will it take to figure out whether or not they're serious? I said, maybe in the first minute. You know, the way they say that you know if you're going to like somebody in the first 5 seconds. Well, I think that very quickly I'll know whether or not something good is going to happen.
President Trump thinks that Kim is going to do the right thing. The president calling this a one-time shot, that this opportunity won't come around again, because if these talks fail and North Korea continues to pursue its nuclear weapons program, then Katie barred the door because it's not going to work out well for Kim. The president is keenly aware of all of the failures that successive administrations have had when it comes to negotiating with North Korea. Now, nobody's really negotiated to this degree with Kim Jong-un, but they certainly have with his father and his grandfather. But the president's still optimistic about the potential outcome here. Listen to this.
We're going in with a very positive attitude, and I think we're going to come out fine. But I've said it many times. Who knows? Who knows? May not work out. It's a good chance it won't work out. There's probably an even better chance that it will take a period of time. It'll be a process.
Now, one of the most interesting aspects of this summit meeting, which will be held, it's a one-on-one, too, simply between the president and Kim Jong-un together with their interpreters, is this first meeting that they will have, 9 o'clock on Tuesday morning, comes after not just tough talk between the two nations, but outright insults between the two leaders. I mean, they do seem to be in a mood to bury the hatchet, but anything can happen between now and 9 a.m. Tuesday, Singapore time. Griff, Abby, Pete.
All right. Welcome
Thanks,
to Singapore, John. What an amazing experience you're going to have.
John,
History in the making. Good to see you. You know, Singapore, so I've lived there before. It is one of the hottest places you can be. It's right next to the equator, so it is hot all year round. But if there's ever a place to find peace, it's going to be in a place like Singapore. The economy is very strong, but it's one of those unique places that's trusted by all different places around the world. China, North Korea, the United States, Taiwan of all places, Israel, the Arab nations. They actually hosted back in 2015 the leaders Xi Jinping and the president of Taiwan, the first time that ever happened. So if there's ever a place where you can hope for success and hope that we can leave there on Tuesday with some sort of an agreement moving forward, it would be a place like Singapore.
And Kim Jong-un taking a big risk leaving his country. You know, you could welcome a coup as a strong man. Thankfully, he knows going to Singapore, he also won't face protests because the First Amendment is quite curtailed in Singapore as well.
Yes.
Let's just say they have a lot of rules and you don't have the First Amendment the way we do here in the United States.
You can't even chew gum in Singapore, by the way. And then
you can't even chew gum. So Kim Jong-un's not worried about protests. It's a pretty good cocoon for him to go into to potentially enter into Singapore.
And Sentosa, just to give you a sense of where Capella is the resort where it's going to take place. But in order to get there, you have to go over a bridge, sort of like Brooklyn for Manhattan. I've taken the subway through there before. And so security is going to be tight. But I think that's where they chose the location so they can sort of seclude it away from everywhere else.
It's very fascinating. And, you know, the optics are so huge. But, you know, at the end of the day, to put into context the significance, the president is the first U.S. president to talk to a North Korean leader about ridding the world of nukes. And he says, you got one shot. This is what the president said.
It's unknown territory in the truest sense. But I really feel confident. I feel that Kim Jong-un wants to do something great for his people, and he has that opportunity. And he won't have that opportunity again. It's never going to be there again. So it's a one-time shot, and I think it's going to work out very well.
The president there calling it an opportunity for his people. You know, you have to look in just a very short period of time. This 34-year-old leader of North Korea has gone from what was perceived to be a hermit, a tyrant, to a now world stage leader. And he likely wants to move to economic growth for his country because he's already got
that's what we're hoping.
The nukes. And that is the hope. And that is what the president is saying. You got a shot. Take it.
The president's doing two things here, it appears. One, he's hedged his bets and set expectations. Hey, it may be one meeting, a series of meetings. We're not going to take the nukes off the table at the first moment. But he's also clearly creating a crucible here. He's saying, this is your moment. This is your time. This is the place. Don't come here and mince words and try to spin something and get a half measure. Either you do it here or you don't do it later. That's the one-time shot. And you hope that, he said, it's very interesting. I'm going to know within a minute. I'm going to know within 5 seconds whether this guy's serious. To be in that room, to hear that conversation as it kicks off, it's going to be
But it's
historic.
like any sort of relationship. I think you can read someone's intentions if you're good at reading people. I think the president feels like he is. You can do that in a matter of a minute by walking into a room and just getting a sense of where they're coming from. The big question, and you make this point, Griff, is what will North Korea want in return?
Right.
But the president continues to say this is going to take some time. You remember when Nixon was opening up with China, they had their first meeting, I think it was 1971. They didn't ultimately get to a place of agreement where we had like an envoy over there till 1979.
That's exactly right.
It was a very long period of time that took place. It was progress all throughout those years. But patience is key here. But that meeting that's going to happen on Tuesday, he will know within that minute if it's going to work or if it's not going to work.
It's very right. And to Pete's point about this, to be in that conversation, there were discussions about whether Trump and Kim would meet, just the two of them, to take away a little bit of the theatrics because of exactly what you mentioned, Abby, which is what President Trump is looking for is an immediate signal, an agreement to begin the framework, to begin the process where the goal is denuclearization.
We'll see where that goes. Well, before he got on a plane, still on a plane, the president will be off his plane, I believe, in about Air Force One, about 2 hours. We'll bring it to you on this channel when he lands in Singapore. But before that, he was flying from Canada, where he was meeting with the G7. A lot of talks contentious about trade. Well, there was an exchange between our president and the Prime Minister of Canada, Justin from Canada. His name's Justin Trudeau, over trade. President making a lot of threats or standing up and saying we won't be taken advantage of. Well, after the president left the G7, the prime minister from Canada had some words for the president. Listen to what Justin said.
It's kind of insulting. And I highlighted that it was not helping in our renegotiation of NAFTA. It would be with absolute certainty and firmness that we move forward with retaliatory measures on July 1st, applying equivalent tariffs to the ones that the Americans have unjustly applied to us. It is not something we relish doing, but it is something that we absolutely will do, because Canadians were polite, we're reasonable, but we also will not be pushed around.
So he was not happy with President Trump's tough talk. But this is what we were all waiting for the responses we were going to get at the end of the G7 meeting, because you're watching the video play out. A lot of smiles, a lot of shaking hands. He's not happy there. The president then tweeted in response to that. He says, based on Justin's false statements at his news conference and the fact that Canada is charging massive tariffs to our U.S. farmers, workers, and companies, I have instructed our U.S. reps not to endorse the communique as we look at tariffs on automobiles flooding the U.S. market.
I'm not sure what a communique is. I think it's like like a shared document that everyone agrees on, right?
You and everyone else, Pete.
Fancy, yeah, exactly. These fancy meetings, there's a communique. Trump's like, we're not in for the generic language that always comes out of these things. It's probably, been worked out in advance. There's a photo that came out of this meeting that's gotten a lot of attention, a viral photo. Ambassador John Bolton tweeted it out about it as well. Look at that photo. So you got President Trump seated. You've got Ambassador Bolton next to him. You've got Shinzo Abe standing there. You've got Angela Merkel, I think Theresa May behind her, her hands firmly planted on the table, staring at him. You almost have the visual of, we won't be your piggy bank anymore, is almost what you hear going through his head, or America first, whatever it is. But what a powerful image of
look at that. So
confrontation.
You can see John Bolton, his head of the national security, right behind President Trump there. And here's what he tweeted out. He said, just another G7 where other countries expect America will always be their bank. The president made it clear today, no more.
Yeah. I just think the world wasn't prepared for the extent to which this president would dig his heels in and say, I was elected on something. I want fair trade deals. I want free trade. But we're not just going to be your resource forever.
Or maybe that he would be a lot of big talk going into the meeting, and then once he was there with them, he would back down a little bit or not be as tough. It's clear that he was just as tough inside those meetings.
Well, we'll talk more about this photo, because it does look like Angela Merkel is taking the alpha male position, staring down at a president sitting. So we'll see, and we're going to find out from Corey Lewandowski.
I don't know.
Nigel Farage.
He's looking pretty
well, look at that. I mean, look.
A lot of resolve there with those arms folded.
This was described in the press as a dominating Angela Merkel staring down at a president listening.
Tell me more.
I want to know what Shinzo Abe is thinking in that moment. All right, well, we've got a lot of folks coming up on this show. Corey Lewandowski, Nigel Farage, Anthony Scaramucci, Joe Lieberman, and Sean Spicer. Some great voices on all the breaking news this morning with this meeting coming up on Tuesday with the North Korean leader.
We got a lot of voices on the ground in Singapore as well. Well, left-wing comedian Bill Maher rooting for a recession.
Please bring on the recession. Yeah. Sorry if that hurts people, but it's either root for a recession or you lose your democracy.
Okay, so can the left finally admit that the anti-Trump hysteria has gone too far? We're going to ask a Democrat next.
Plus, President Trump confident he'll know within seconds of meeting Kim Jong-un whether he means business or not. Our next guest takes us inside the negotiating room. Stay tuned.
The way they say that if you're going to like somebody in the first 5 seconds. You ever hear that one? Well, I think that very quickly I'll know whether or not something good is going to happen.
Well, ahead of the historic Singapore summit with North Korea, President Trump says he'll know right away whether Kim Jong-un means business.
Our next guest wrote the book on President Trump's negotiating skills. Brad Thomas is the author of The Trump Factor, and he joins us right now. Brad, a perfect voice to have this morning. You heard the president a couple of days ago on the South Lawn on Friday saying, look, it's not about over-preparing for this. It comes down to attitude. How do you expect the president is going to go into this meeting?
Absolutely. It's great to be back on the show here again today. Look, President Trump has a number of tools in the toolkit. You know, as the deal maker in chief, I think one of his most strategic tools is his toughness. He's going to go into this summit as a very, very tough tough negotiator. You know, he's the deal maker in chief, and I fully expect him to go in with really, guns loaded, and he's going to, really charge like a rhino. He's going to take charge of this summit, and I think that's really going to be his number one tool that I think, again, Abby and Pete, that he's got in his toolkit.
Brad, as he goes in, is he, for his preparation, does he have, okay, I've got option 1, option 2, option 3 from a briefing book, or is he saying, hey, I'm really going to feel this out, and from there, I'll decide what's next?
I think he's already, I think he knows what he's looking for. Again, his team is there in advance, and I think there's a lot of strategy that's going to be going into place here. But at the top, I mean, the leader, President Trump, he's really going to focus on, I think he's right. Those first minutes are going to tell a lot because, it really comes down to trust and building a trusting relationship with the parties involved. And I think, President Trump, eyeball to eyeball, he's going to be able to and look Kim in the eye and really understand and develop, because I think that's going to be the key word from this summit, is building a relationship with trust and starting with that first meeting.
Yeah, because these things, as we know, are so delicate and they take time. Something as big as negotiating with North Korea. What will be success, in your opinion, leaving that summit on Tuesday? How will all of us here at home be talking about this as a successful meeting? What needs to be done?
Sure. Well, I think it will be successful. And I have full confidence in the president. I think he's going to do a great job. He always is. Again, we hired him as the deal maker in chief. So my confidence is really at an all-time high going into this conference. But again, Trump Tower wasn't built in a day. Rome wasn't built in a day. And I don't think this summit's going to be, done in a day. I don't think we're going to, walk away with a done deal. I think this is the first brick in the foundation. So I think it's going to take a number of meetings and negotiations. But again, I think it's going to start with laying that foundation, that framework built on trust, and really starting to understand each other and flush out, the details here. But again, I think the parties involved, it really comes down to that relationship. And again, I don't think we're going to expect a tremendous lot that first week. I don't think it's going to be a market mover type of a week. But I think over time, hopefully, President Trump will be able to negotiate this deal again. And I think the foundation, the key word here is trust.
Brad, you say charging in like a rhino. It's a great visual. You've got Kim Jong-un. We don't know if he's 34, 35, or 36. It depends on who you believe. You've got President Trump has been through the ringer here in the real estate world in negotiations and business. What is it about his past that has prepared him, as he says? He said, I don't need to over-prepare. I've been prepared my whole life. What is it that has prepared him the most?
I think, again, his experience, I mean, it really comes down to the lessons learned in life. And again, one reason I elected this, I voted for this president, he was elected, of course, is his experience in the battlefield of business. And, as Trump said in The Art of the Deal, it comes down, really to trust. And he has a lot of balls in the air. I think that's really the key takeaway here. Is that, and really, he runs this country like a business. And I think that's really the key here, is we have a businessman, in the White House negotiating this deal. We haven't seen this ever in the history of the United States. So, again, my confidence is extremely high here going into this summit.
All right, Brad Thomas, you've written a book about this. You know what you speak. Great to have you on this morning.
Thanks, Brad. Appreciate your time.
Great. Thank you so much.
All right. Well, thousands of journalists from across the world arriving in Singapore along with Kim Jong-un and before President Trump. Well, we know a good journalist, Ed Henry. He's on the ground there, too, and he'll join us live.
Can't wait for that. And left-wing comedian Bill Maher rooting for a recession. Is this really what Democrats are wanting?
Please bring on the recession. Yeah. Sorry if that hurts people, but it's either root for a recession or you lose your democracy.
Like a car. Just want to find
We're back with some quick headlines for you. We begin with a Fox News alert. A man is dead after a helicopter goes down. The chopper crashing into power lines along Wisconsin's Fox River before plunging into the water. The mangled aircraft was lifted to the surface following a search and rescue effort. The victim is believed to be the pilot. And President Trump could soon be on his way to another summit. Russian President Vladimir Putin saying he is happy to meet with our commander-in-chief whenever Washington is ready. President Trump and Putin apparently discussed a potential summit in Vienna. That is according to the Kremlin, but no decisions have yet been made. And Justify races into the history books at the 150th running of the Belmont Stakes.
He's just perfect, and now he's just immortal! Justify is the 13th Triple Crown winner!
It was amazing. The undefeated 3-year-old completing a sweep of the Kentucky Derby, the Preakness Stakes, and now Belmont Stakes. The favored Chestnut Colt becoming just the second horse to achieve that feat since 1978. And at 52, Mike Smith is the oldest jockey to ever win the Triple Crown. Unbelievable. Griff, take it away.
Thanks, Abby. HBO host Bill Maher facing backlash after saying he hopes the economy will crash in order to, quote, get rid of President Trump.
I feel like the bottom has to fall out at some point. And by the way, I'm hoping for it because I think one way you get rid of Trump is a crashing economy. Yeah. So please bring on the recession. Yeah. Sorry if that hurts people, but it's either root for a recession or you lose your democracy.
Here to react, Democratic strategist and psychotherapist and author Nancy Collier. Nancy, good morning. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
What is Bill Maher doing? He's literally hating President Trump so much that he's rooting for another recession.
I don't think he's really rooting for another recession. I think what he's trying to point out is that our democracy is at stake right now. Our democracy, if there are no rules, then there's no system. And what we're seeing right now is that if somebody is above the law and people that commit crimes or do whatever they do are let off the hook, which is what's being suggested right now, then we have no system to protect us. So I don't know if you really pushed Bill Maher that he meant we should suffer more financially, because actually the economy is doing quite well, and that's one thing we're really excited about. So I don't know if he might have been being a bit sarcastic, but our rules are being taken away. Democracy.
But Nancy, hang on. It prejudges that the president has done anything illegal to begin with. I mean, this whole notion that the president is above the law and it's something that Democrats are attacking is just not accurate, and it's not fair. We have a Russia investigation out there. We will get some results, but it's early to be saying that. And those that lost their businesses and their life savings in the dustbin of heartache in 2008, that is an outrageous comment. Would you not agree?
I think we have to stop going back to 2008. I think we've had a president who is unraveling a system piece by piece. And as a psychotherapist, we have a raging narcissist in the office. And the classic symptoms of narcissism are a need to be special, a need to be...
But wait a minute. Yes. That's your opinion as a psychotherapist, that he's a narcissist, but he is the current president of the United States. Should we not give him the benefit of the doubt? And is it not perhaps bad on the psychotherapy of the country to suggest, Bill Maher suggesting, that the president is this above the law guy?
Well, the president is saying that he can pardon himself. So when you have somebody saying, it doesn't matter, first of all, I've done nothing wrong, but if I did, it doesn't matter because I can pardon myself, that, you don't need to be a psychotherapist to say, that suggests that I can do basically whatever I want, that I'm a king, right? We're moving in the direction of an authoritarian government and away from systems.
That's just not true, though. He has done nothing to suggest that he undermines democracy. In the steps he's taken, there was a legal discussion over whether or not he would have the option to pardon himself. But, you know, this whole, I mean, you mentioned about the economy. We're celebrating the economy. Look, at the end of the day, why won't Democrats, why won't people like Bill Maher give President Trump a chance to deliver in the case of the economy, in the case of where he is now in North Korea, for the nation?
Well, I would ask a question back, right? That's what we do. Why are the Republicans turning away and turning away and turning away from some really bad behavior? Look, let's just take the Me Too movement just for a moment. Every man that has been caught misbehaving has lost their personal life, has lost their work life. Trump continues on. Everything that's done, it's Teflon. So why don't the Republicans stand up and say, hey, I want my party back as a Republican? You know, there are plenty of conservatives.
Nancy, you're opening a big discussion there. And, you know, President Bill Clinton also dealing with his own issues to that.
Also bad behavior.
Thank you so much for coming in, Nancy Collier, Democratic strategist and psychotherapist, great author. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Fox News alert. President Trump getting ready to meet face-to-face with Kim Jong-un, and it all started with this.
As I said, they will be met with fire, fury, and frankly power, the likes of which this world has never seen before.
We take a look back at what led to this high-stakes summit, and we're live on the ground in Singapore ahead of the meeting. Ed Henry, the one and only, is there, and he's next. There he is, right there. Oh, what's he got? Here we go. Get ready. Ed in Singapore.
Sorry, I can't make it. It's just my eczema again, but it's fine. Yeah, it's fine.
You okay?
Eczema. It's
called the other day, and they said, would you speak to the leader of North Korea? I said, absolutely. Why not?
North Korea launched its first ballistic missile since President Trump took office.
After 17 months, U.S. citizen Otto Warmbier was finally released from North Korea.
Otto Warmbier has just passed away. The era of strategic patience with the North Korean regime has failed. North Korea best not make any more threats to the United States. They will be met with fire and fury like the world has never seen.
North Korea firing another missile over the country of Japan, proving Guam is within striking distance.
Rocket Man is on a suicide mission for himself.
It makes sense for North Korea to come to the table and to make a deal.
Today, the United States is designating North Korea as a state sponsor of terrorism.
Yesterday, North Korea talked to South Korea and said, hey, you know what? We'd like to talk to you about coming to the Winter Olympics.
I just spoke to President Moon. He's very thankful for what we've done. They're having talks.
Kim Jong-un said he is committed to denuclearization. He expressed his eagerness to meet President Trump.
Secretary of State right now, Mike Pompeo, is in North Korea.
3 Americans detained in North Korea will be coming home.
June 12th, are you going to be in Singapore?
We'll see what happens.
Yesterday, the president called Kim's bluff.
I've decided to terminate the planned summit.
Kim Jong-un and South Korea's president meeting overnight. President Trump teases that his face-to-face meeting could still happen.
In just a few minutes, I'll be leaving for Singapore. It's a great opportunity for peace.
That was a summary of how we got here. Now we're looking at live pictures here in Singapore. A lot of hands trying to block what we can see. But apparently of Kim Jong-un there in Singapore. They're not used to cameras there in North Korea because, of course, it's a shut-down hermit kingdom. But in Singapore, they have press and cameras, and we're trying to get a look here of Kim Jong.
And, you know, the optics of this, just to point out, you know, we've seen how Kim Jong-un, when he met with Moon Jae-in on 2 occasions, you know, the sort of powerful, and we're looking now, there is Kim Jong-un getting a shot. This is significant because, you know, he had his motorcade and his guards were running along him to meet with Moon Jae-in. And now we see, obviously, Kim Jong-un just inches from a camera. This optic is actually significant.
We don't ever get this shot of Kim Jong-un. This is the 3rd time he has left the Hermit Kingdom. He's left North Korea. So there he is on the ground in Singapore. Also, our own Ed Henry, a Fox News chief national correspondent, and of course a friend on the couch here. Ed is in Singapore as well.
Good morning.
Ed, this is significant. We are just getting this live footage now. Kim Jong-un arriving on the ground there in Singapore. The meeting taking place a matter of hours. I mean, coming on Tuesday. Just give us, set the scene for us. Give us a sense of what is going on right now. What are we watching?
Guys, I can tell you there is a buzz in the air in this city, the entire nation, Singapore, really excited about this. I've been walking the streets. I went to a shopping mall here. Some people saw my credential with Fox News on it. They started asking me shopkeepers questions. They said, do you think there's a real shot at peace? People here are very excited that they're hosting history, quite frankly. And you're so right to point out, it's so rare that we get these up-close pictures, you know, from independent media, in this case, the Prime Minister's office, but we will eventually get the U.S. press going into some kind of a meeting with the President of the United States and Chairman Kim. And think about the possibility, we don't know this yet, but the possibility of maybe even a joint news conference at some point. That'd be the first time any of us know of any time that anyone in a free press asked a question of Chairman Kim. We're a long way of that actually happening, but that would be fascinating. And by the way, we're picking up reports on the ground here, guys, that Kim Jong-un's sister may be traveling with him as well. Remember, she was an important figure at those Winter Olympics as well in terms of opening some channels of diplomacy. So we could be on the verge of some very, very big events here.
Very much so. And so we see right now these live footage. Shaky must be not on a steady cam, but ultimately you got the Prime Minister of Singapore meeting with Kim Jong-un. The president on his way. He'll arrive in a couple of hours, Ed. You mentioned the possibility of a joint press conference. Is that something we're hearing about? Speculation? Do you know anything else about what we'll see on camera?
There's just a speculation that, look, if there's a speculation here on the ground that if there's a peace deal signed, you would expect that they would take some kind of questions from the international media. There's 4,000 reporters here on the ground, but we're a long way, obviously, from a peace deal or from a news conference, because I think President Trump has been very careful in recent days at the G7 and back at the White House before that to try to tamp down expectations and say, this is not the be-all and end-all, this summit. This is basically just round one. And remember, a few days ago, the president even said there could be hosting Kim Jong-un at the White House and or Mar-a-Lago down in Palm Beach. So I think what he's trying to do is you now have the mainstream media starting to say two things. One, can the president really get a peace deal here in Singapore? If he doesn't, maybe it's a failure. And also saying, how do you verify whatever Kim Jong-un says? Those are valid questions. But let's not rain on the parade before it even happens. This president has brought us closer to peace than any Democratic or Republican president in terms of dealing with North Korea in history.
Ed, give our audience a sense, because you are over there in Singapore. You know, it's one of the cleanest places in the world. I hope you don't chew gum, because you can be fined for that. But it now has its third prime minister, Lee Hsien Loong. Lee Kuan Yew was the original prime minister who was the one that really created Singapore for what we know it is today. But the importance of where the meeting is taking place, I think, matters a lot here, because as you probably remember, in 2015, it hosted Xi Jinping with the president of Taiwan. It is a place that I think a number of nations around the world trust. They trust Singapore. How important is it to have it there?
Well, it's a little windy, so I'm going to try to bear with me. I'm going to run through some headlines here. The Straits Times on Sunday, the headline here, Trump on mission of peace. That's the real news. That's what he said at the G7. Very important. Then they have some fun stuff in terms of Kim Jong-un and the president, sort of fake photos here of them checking out the sights in Singapore. We'll see whether they do some walking around together. But to your point, Abby, I'm getting to the final headline. We passed through the Fox team Seoul on our way here to Singapore, and you can see one of the Korean papers that I picked up in the airport. There's a story at the bottom here that basically says that there were some South Korean broadcasting reporters who got into trouble for trespassing on the property of a North Korean diplomat who lives here in Singapore. Well, why is that important? Number one, very serious about security here. As you say, those two journalists got arrested. They take things very, very seriously here in Singapore, as you know, number one. And number two, that's because North Korea, in terms of diplomacy, Singapore is one of the few countries that actually has diplomatic relations with North Korea, that has a diplomat on the ground here in Singapore. That was one reason why they chose Singapore as the host country. But secondly, as you noted, Abby, very rightly, security is intense here. And so this is where you can host two world leaders of this magnitude, as well as the international press and everyone else.
And let me, earlier, Pete was talking about how amazing it must be to be in that meeting. What can you tell us? I know there was some discussion that they would be allowed to meet just one-on-one initially, and we wouldn't see, like we just saw with the president, a camera meeting with the Prime Minister of Singapore. What can you tell us about the actual first 5 seconds and how that'll go?
They're still working out the details, is the honest answer. But I can tell you, based on what President Trump has been saying publicly, it's very clear that he wants to take a measure of Kim Jong-un. Remember, his Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, has met with Kim at least twice. The President of the United States has never met with him. No president here from the United States has. So what I suspect is it very likely could be the two of them without TV cameras, without staff, but obviously with an interpreter. So not just one-on-one, but trying to get a personal relationship. The president president has been saying that. He said that in Canada yesterday, and he got mocked by some reporters around the world. Oh, he's backpedaling now, saying they just want a relationship, they want a dialogue. No, he's talking about round one. That doesn't mean there won't be a peace deal. It just means that this president understands, in terms of the art of the deal, you have to build a rapport before you're going to get to denuclearization. And that's the ultimate goal, is denuclearization.
These things take time. Ed, what an experience, history in the making. We will come back to you soon, but
Thanks,
have a
Ed.
great time
It's
over
just
there.
beginning.
Ed. Be back to you.
And
All right,
we've
look
been-
forward to seeing you in a couple hours.
We've been
Thanks,
showing you,
Ed.
of course, the photos that are just coming in. Kim Jong-un arriving there on the ground in Singapore, just a couple hours away from President Trump, also landing there in Singapore. So it is all happening. We are bringing all of it to you this morning. You don't want to leave.
Our live coverage from Singapore continues just about an hour and a half away from the president's arrival there. More reporting from the ground on this historic day.
And more to come after this. Welcome back. All eyes on President Trump and Kim Jong-un ahead of the historic summit. New reports now saying that some of his attention could be sinister. Authorities warning about a potential wave of Chinese spies planted all over Singapore, bugging hotel rooms, infiltrating summit staff. So what is the U.S. doing to stop them? Here with Intel, senior fellow at the Center for Digital Government, Morgan Wright. Morgan, always good to have you with us. This is a part of this whole story, maybe one of the most important pieces of it, because when it comes to spying, China might be one of the most sophisticated when it comes to that. What is the U.S. intel doing to try and combat this? Is it even possible?
No, it's possible, but, it's one of those things. You take some basic countermeasures. Look, the Chinese are going to try and give out lots of everything from room keys to phones. Remember, they just banned Huawei and ZTE phones on military bases, finally. We've had a lot of issues with that. So there's, it's the technical compromise, but what's even more important is the human compromise of this. They've been on that island for a long time, but very focused on it now, trying to compromise everybody from the wait staff to people working at the hotel, at the airport, not only in Singapore, but in China, in the United States. And by the way, that OPM breach, Office of Personnel Management from 2015, guess what? That's paying big dividends for the Chinese right now.
Yeah. So the way it's set up, Sentosa is sort of an island off of Singapore. You have to go over a bridge or through a subway to get there, which is probably why they picked that specific location. They can close it off from everybody else. Is there a place in the hotel that you know for sure will not be bugged, where they're going to be meeting potentially, where you have no concerns about that?
You always have concerns. You never say never. That's one of the, the lessons you learn in the intelligence community. But what I guarantee what they will do is they will have the best of the best from the White House, from WACA, from all the other agencies. They will sweep that room. They'll lock it down. They'll protect it. Anybody that's looking at classified material is going to be, inside of tents, inside of places where you can't even have cameras looking at that. The biggest thing the Chinese want access to, besides our people, is what information do we have that we will be used for our negotiations, because that'll give them an idea of our capabilities, how we're monitoring North Korea, have we penetrated their networks. So the Chinese are learning to find out what our capabilities are as much as what our negotiating position is.
Yeah, I mean, we forget China is 90% of trade with North Korea. They are basically the ones that keep North Korea afloat. So they care more than anybody about how this summit goes down. Morgan Wright, great to have your expertise this morning.
You bet, Abby. Thank you.
All right, have a good day. Coming up ahead of the Singapore summit, what is the country like? I grew up there, and I will give you my own inside look. Plus, Kim Jong-un making his first public appearance outside North Korea. This happening just moments ago. We are live on the ground with what goes into protecting the North Korean dictator. That's up next.
This is a Fox News alert. Kim Jong-un moments ago meeting with Singapore's leader ahead of the historic summit with President Trump. The world watching that country closely. Look at these images. It's just amazing to see this, that there is a camera following Kim Jong-un now around as he meets Singapore's leaders. This is access that we have not seen before, and it must be perhaps for him also a bit alarming, if you will, to realize you are exposed now. The world is watching you, and he cannot control the press.
Suddenly, you're under a microscope.
Yeah, and everyone's watching Singapore. Why Singapore? Why was this the place that they decided to have the summit? The third time that Kim Jong-un has left his country. So I grew up in Singapore. I've spent a lot of time over there. It has got an incredible story to tell. Lee Kuan Yew was the one that really created Singapore. It was the first prime minister. It's the cleanest place you'll ever go. It's got a lot of rules. There I am at the U.S. Embassy there in Singapore.
Wow.
Don't worry, always a huge bow in the hair, of course. But you get fined for chewing gum. But their whole thing is about economics. They say if we can succeed economically, we will thrive and everything else will fall into place. So they're all about open markets. But it's my favorite place, Pete, because everyone gets along. They want everyone to get along. Their whole thing is we want to be trusted. So they are the one place you can go, maybe Switzerland as well, where you've got North Koreans, the Chinese, the Taiwanese, the Israelis, the Arab nations, the United States, all have a relationship with Singapore. That's important. So when you're trying to find a place to host a summit like this, there are very few options.
Why has Singapore been able to develop their economy so successfully in a neighborhood of folks that have not been so successful?
That's a good question. It's the 7th highest GDP per capita, 5 million people there in the world, U.S. number 20. So that just gives you a sense of how successful they have been. But they treat themselves like they are a powerhouse, and they know how important economics is. So they say we're going to open up to the rest of the world. They put politics, they almost put economics before any